One Up Media.
If you walk down Serangoon Road and Owen Roads Junction in the Rochor district of Singapore, you'll notice a red building standing 7 floors tall. Looking at it, it's impossible to miss the bold blue sign which says the Fortuna Hotel at the entrance. As Singapore evolved into a bustling metropolis, towering skyscrapers and malls now encircle the building, overshadowing its presence. But the hotel has been around since 1994, boasting 85 rooms and running smoothly for the past 2 decades. But here's something that most folks don't know, especially the younger crowd in Singapore. This location holds a darker history. It's where one of Singapore's worst disasters since World War II unfolded. A story often overlooked, but never forgotten. About 4 decades ago, the current location of the Fortuna Hotel was once occupied by another hotel, named the Hotel New World, which tragically met its catastrophic fate on the 15th of March, 1986. At precisely 11:25 a.m., the 6-story building collapsed in less than 60 seconds, leaving nothing but rubble in its wake. 4 days later, as the search and rescue operation concluded on the 19th of March, 17 survivors emerged from the labyrinth of debris, and 33 bodies were pulled from the rubble. From One Up Media, this is Mass Murders. In the aftermath of the Hotel New World's collapse, colossal concrete slabs and twisted steel beams lay scattered across the site. The air was thick with dust and debris, shrouding the area in a haze reminiscent of war-torn landscapes. Just minutes after the calamity struck, the scene became a battleground for rescue efforts. Emergency responders, including firefighters, police units, and medical personnel, swiftly arrived at the site, facing a race against time amidst the chaos to rescue those trapped beneath the debris. Collaboratively, the rescuers strategized to devise a plan to extricate individuals trapped within the rubble. As time pressed upon them, they decided to divide the area into 3 sectors for enhanced control and more efficient rescue operations. Each sector was manned by specialized rescue teams under the supervision of a sector commander. An adept civil defense officer took charge as the site commander, orchestrating and overseeing the rescue efforts. From 1 to 5 p.m., a notable assembly of Singaporean officials arrived. Among them was the late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, who later remarked that the collapse of such a building is unprecedented. His arrival coincided with the deployment of heavy machinery by the rescuers to clear the upper layer of the debris. Cranes were employed to hoist the weighty concrete slabs, while another team, armed with power saws, drills, steel cutters, and crowbars, delicately dismantled the wreckage in a layer-by-layer approach. Civil engineers were also present at the site, offering guidance and advice throughout the operation. At 6:40 p.m., the first trapped survivor was successfully extracted from the rubble and promptly airlifted to the Singapore General Hospital for urgent medical attention. Subsequently, as the rescuers continued their efforts, several other casualties were pulled out and transported to the hospital for treatment. Amidst the rescue efforts, a solemn hush enveloped the scene as bodies were retrieved from the chaos, while cheers and applause erupted each time a survivor emerged. It was a true reflection of the nation's heartfelt solidarity with the victims. As evening drew nearer, more people were being pulled out from the site. Yet numerous others remained trapped beneath the rubble. At the nearby subway construction site, a team of Irish engineers had gathered, closely observing the ongoing rescue operations. Their attention was fixed on the use of heavy machinery to eliminate the vast heaps of debris. They were concerned about the rubble stability during removal and warned the workers that any misstep during the extraction could provoke an unexpected shift in the remaining structure, endangering the lives of the people buried at the very bottom. In response, the Irish team suggested an alternative approach: abandon the use of the heavy cranes and forklifts, and instead tunnel into the foundations of the building to extricate survivors from beneath the ground. This was an extremely unconventional suggestion, and the Singaporean authorities faced a challenging decision. They grappled with a dilemma. On one hand, summoning excavators and digging machinery to create the tunnel would consume valuable time that the victims did not have. Conversely, persisting with the removal of debris from the surface risked potential accidents, where the concrete pile could shift and cause further harm to those involved in the rescue operation. Hours passed as the decision lingered in the air, all while the cranes and forklifts persisted in their efforts. It wasn't until 6 a.m. the next day that the Singapore authorities finally decided to give it a go. After studying the building's floor plan, rescuers concluded that the most effective entry point would be through the hotel's ventilation shafts that were accessible from the street level. As the initial pile of ground was excavated, tunnelers ventured inside, only to be met with an even bigger problem. Amidst the tight space, knee-deep water, and mangled vehicles, the tunnelers could smell petrol everywhere. It came from the many vehicles in the basement car park that had been crushed by the collapsed building. A single spark would ignite the fuel, and the entire site would explode, instantly killing everyone in the vicinity. Immediately, an order was issued to kill all engines on the machines in the area, and efforts were made to pump out all the water and fuel from the site. Once most of the water had been removed, rescuers manually carved out an improvised tunnel to access the basement. However, this process proved incredibly laborious. Sources suggest that it took more than 7 hours to dig a mere 9-meter passageway. In contrast, a garden snail could cover that distance in 12 minutes. Nevertheless, they continued digging until 7 a.m. the following morning, only for their worst fears to come true. The ground began shifting, and the tunnel was moments away from collapsing. They had no choice but to leave everything behind and swiftly evacuate. Fortunately, they managed to scramble out in the nick of time. Undeterred, the rescuers were going to try again. With the first and second tunnel abandoned, they began building a third tunnel, entering from the southeast of the site. However, they soon find out that their path was blocked by a number of vehicles that were in their way. In response, they crawled out and dug a fourth tunnel northwards, hoping that this would be the one that could save the victims. They dug tirelessly through the night, digging all around the perimeter of the basement. By 7 a.m. on Monday, nearly 2 full days after the building's collapse, a moment of hope arose for the tunnelers. In the cramped and dark tunnel, they could hear the distinct sound of tapping on metal. One of the tunnelers grabbed his tools and responded by hitting a steel pipe next to him, mimicking the rhythm. The tapping maintained a consistent and almost purposeful pattern, which could only mean one thing: survivors. As they dug closer and closer, they could see the faces of some of the victims. They looked pale, weak, and bloodied, but they were alive. Persisting in their efforts, the rescuers closed in on the victims, but a final obstacle loomed between them. A colossal concrete pillar, now laying on its side, acted as a barrier, separating the trapped victims from the rescuers. Breaking through the pillar held significant risk. It could result in a catastrophic collapse, burying both the victims and the tunnelers under an immense weight of over 6,000 tons of concrete. Yet leaving the obstacle intact meant that the victims would remain trapped, rendering the efforts of the rescuers futile. Without a moment of deliberation, the rescuers made the critical decision to break through the pillar, as they knew that it was their only chance of saving the victims. One of the tunnelers swiftly grabbed the drill, its hum filling the tense air as it bore into the solid concrete. It was nighttime on March 18, 1986, and outside the grounds of the collapsed Hotel New World, cheers and applause erupted from the crowd. The tunnelers had succeeded. Using the same method and working tirelessly, the last confirmed survivor was pulled out after an intense 83 hours since the collapse. A total of 17 individuals have been rescued thus far, but unfortunately, the count of casualties currently stands at 11, with the potential for this number to rise further. The next day, March 19, rescue operations were stopped by midday upon the realization that no more survivors could be found. As tunneling ceased, everyone's efforts shifted to clearing the remaining debris. Subsequently, workers commenced the arduous task of uncovering additional dead victims, elevating the death toll to 16. The site's activity continued until March 22nd, marking a full 7 days after the collapse. During this time, the recovery of the last 12 bodies brought the ultimate death toll to 33. Heavy machinery was then deployed to expedite the site clearance, and the road was reopened to traffic. The investigation into the disaster encompassed several potential causes. Contrary to popular belief, the collapse was not attributed to an explosion or poor construction. Investigations also confirmed that the ongoing construction of the subway system nearby was not a factor, as it was situated a considerable distance from the hotel. Investigators then honed in on pivotal clues found within the nightclub, where a hostess had previously disclosed that a dance floor pillar had exhibited a crack on the eve of the collapse. Then, they discovered that various additions to the building were made after its initial construction, including air conditioning systems, a large bank safe, and ceramic tiles. Despite rumors circulating about the building being excessively overloaded due to these modifications, investigators determined that the additional weight was inconsequential to the building's stability, but it did reveal a crucial error in the original structural engineer's calculations. It turns out that whoever had done the calculations had neglected to include the building's dead load during construction. The engineer had only considered the live load, which was the weight of the occupants, furniture, and fixtures. He had overlooked the dead load, which encompassed the weight of the building itself. Hence, the collapse of the Hotel New World was inevitable. Further details revealed that the building was designed by an unqualified draftsman, not a certified structural engineer. This draftsman, who was responsible for overestimating the building's capacity to bear weight, took directions from the building owner, Mr. Ng Kong Lim, who unfortunately perished inside the collapsing building. Ng had supervised the construction process, and it was very clear that he had made the decision to use poor materials in an effort to cut costs. The thrifty path to savings can sometimes carry an unseen and steep toll. Choosing to cut expenses in construction materials might seem like a prudent choice at the moment, but it often carries a profound cost, sometimes a cost beyond monetary measure. In this case, the tragedy was measured in lives lost, dreams shattered, and futures interrupted, and it culminated in what we call mass murder, with a grim tally of 33 lives lost. In the aftermath of this tragedy, rigorous inspections were conducted on all 1970s built structures in Singapore to identify any potential structural weaknesses. As a result, several buildings were deemed unsafe and evacuated for subsequent demolition, including those of a junior college and various school campuses. To prevent similar incidents in the future, the Singapore government implemented more stringent regulations on construction practices. Starting in 1989, all structural designs must undergo thorough scrutiny by multiple accredited checkers before any works can be carried out. As for the site of the collapse, a new chapter dawned 5 years later with the commencement of construction for a new 7-story hotel in 1991. Emerging from the shadows of the past, the Fortuna Hotel welcomed its first guests 3 years later in 1994. Mass Murders is a One-Up Media original. A quick word on our reenactments and dramatizations. While we can't know exactly what they say, think, or feel at the moment, it is all based on research. This episode was executive produced by Guang Jin, produced and written by Ethan Sam, edited by Alex, narrated by Jason, audio experience by Ethan Sam, with additional engineering by Ashley from One-Up Media. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.